students, let's move on to the further topics of unit number 3 in human resource management. In the last video of unit number 3, we talked about recruitment, selection, and the various types of tests, the various types of interviews that are part of recruitment and selection process. We also discussed about internal sources as well as external sources. Now, in this video, let us talk about further topics in the unit number 3. Let us come over to the first thing, that is placement. Now, what is placement? Placement is the determination of the job to which an accepted candidate is to be assigned and his assignment to that job. So basically, putting the selected person, selected candidate on the most suitable job is basically placement. Now, why is it important to place the person on the right job? So that the chances of an employee leaving the job are negligible, because an employee has been hired after a lot of effort in parts of on account of time, on account of cost. So it is advisable that the employee must be retained in the organization. The job which is being allocated to the employee should match the specifications and should match the abilities of the candidate. So that is why putting the right person on the right job is very important. Now, once an employee has been allocated a job, the next thing that comes is induction. Induction may also be called as orientation. So it is basically a type of training which is given to an employee so that the employee basically feels comfortable in the organization and can be, it is basically an initial preparation before an employee actually occupies his job role in the organization. Now, for any induction program or an orientation program, there are certain basic contents that need to be part of it. Since an induction or an orientation program is basically about welcoming new employees in the organization so that the employees get acquainted to the physical layout, the basic rules, regulations and policies of the organization. The employee gets acquainted to the other employees, other team members, seniors, subordinates, as well as colleagues, so that the employee knows about the basic disciplinary measures, the basic rules and regulations in the organization that needs to be followed. So that is why induction program is important, so that the employee becomes comfortable and is ready to take up his new job roles in the organization. So these are some of the important contents that need to be covered in an induction program. An induction program should include about the information about the location and physical layout of the enterprise, an informal introduction with the colleagues in the organization, the supervisors, managers, formal relationships, the customers that the employee will be dealing, the terms and conditions of employment, some basic rules to be followed in the organization, and so on. Now, why is this induction or familiarization or orientation important? The first reason, as I told earlier, is to eliminate or to reduce employee turnover. Now, in order to make sure that a new employee adjusts well to the organization, it is very important to impart him some kind of induction training. This will really help an employee to come over his fears and anxieties and to eliminate employee turnover. It also helps to build up confidence among the new employee and to eliminate the fear and anxieties that may be there within the minds of an employee. It also helps an employee in getting acquainted to the workflows, processes, systems and people around, so that when the person or when the employee actually starts with his work, the quality and productivity is improved. Another reason, it helps in promoting a sense of belongingness and loyalty towards his new organization. Last but not the least, it helps an employee to build soft skills, that is positive attitudes and values towards other employees in the organization. It helps the employee in having a knowledge about the values which are being followed in the organization, so that the new employee can be familiarized with those things and does not feel out of the place. So once an employee induction is over, the employee now becomes a part or a family member within the organization and workplace, and can now very well start with his work in the organization. Another reason why it should be done, as discussed earlier, it helps the new employee to know about other employees in the workplace. It helps in forming informal relationships. People get to know each other better, so that eventually, when they are working together in teams, there is better coordination and better support. So when an employee is appointed in the organization, a formal induction or familiarization training occurs, which basically includes general training, job training, and finally evaluation. General training is the training which is training related to layout, basic facilities, terms, conditions, basic policies of the organization, rules and regulations to be followed, timings and all. So all this kind of training is basically general training, because it is equally applicable to all new employees who are joining the organization, irrespective of the functional area or department or the job role that they are occupying. Now, when we are talking about job training is a specific training with respect to the particular job that is being allocated to the person. And once the person or a new employee has been given sufficient time, then the employee is evaluated to see if he has gained sufficient knowledge, skills and abilities to perform the job and to sustain in the organization. Now, general training basically comprises of the front office, organizational culture, values, welfare of employees, benefits, and such other things. Site, general administration, disciplinary procedures, grievance procedures, health, safety, welfare measures, rules and regulations related to dress code, absenteeism, working conditions, timings, leaves, and so on. So that is general training. It is common to all the employees who are there, a part of the organization. Then when we talk about job training is department specific, it is functional area specific. It basically talks about the duties and responsibilities that are specifically allocated to the job. It is more of technical in nature, and it basically relates to the job which is allocated to employees in the organization. And finally, evaluation is done to see the effectiveness of this general training as well as job training, to conduct exit interviews with any employees who are leaving the organization, and to identify the areas of improvement and continuously develop induction training programs for the future. So that is how evaluation system works. Now coming over to the next part of the unit number 3, that is job changes. A job change basically means any kind of movement or any kind of a difference which is created in the job. This difference could be a different job code, it could be a different job title, it could be a different job location, it could be a different job grade, and so on. Now when we talk about job changes, these changes can be of two types. We talk about internal mobility and we talk about external mobility. External mobility is also called as separation. Now, internal mobility basically means that a person is moving within the organization. This is the movement of an employee within the organization itself. The employee is still the part of the organization. It is just that maybe that his department is changing, maybe that the physical location where the employee is working, that is changing, maybe that the employee is moving from a lower grade to a higher grade, or a vice versa, and so on. So that is basically internal mobility. Whereas when we talk about external mobility, it is basically separation. Over here, the employee is no longer the part of the organization. The employee either voluntarily or involuntarily has to leave the organization and is separated from it. That is why it is separation. Now coming over to first one, that is internal mobility. So internal mobility is basically mobility of employees from one job to another by means of transfer, promotion and demotion. So this basically means that the employee is still a part of the same organization. He is not leaving the organization. He is just being moved from one job position to another job position, from one job location to another job location, from one department to another department within the same enterprise. Now there are various ways by means of which internal mobility is possible. One of the first ones is transfer. Now transfer of an employee is basically a horizontal or a lateral movement of an employee from one job, from one department, from one shift, from one plant or from one position to another at the same or another place where his salary, status and responsibility all remain the same. So in case of transfer, there is physical movement of an employee, and this physical movement could be from one department to another, from one physical location to another physical location, from one branch to another branch, from one plant to another plant, from one site to another site, and so on. The thing is that the designation of an employee, the salary of an employee, the status of an employee, the responsibilities allocated to the employee, more or less they all remain the same. Now, why employee transfers occur? Now, employee transfer is must and essential in organization because it helps in minimizing politics between the employees. It helps in ensuring cordial relationships between the employees, between the employee and the employer. It helps in increasing transparency. It helps in to obviate the syndicate of employees for unethical purpose and to obviate nepotism in the organization. So that is why employee transfers are important. At times, these transfers may be initiated from the employee side, and at times, these transfers may be initiated by the company side. Now transfers, an employee can also apply for transfer, and again this transfer can be a permanent transfer as well as a temporary transfer. An employee can apply for transfer because of maybe some health issues, maybe because of commuting issues, maybe because the employee is not able to adjust with the present team, maybe because the employee finds more growth opportunities in some other department, maybe because of some health reasons and so on. So that is why transfers can be initiated from the employee side also. Similarly, transfers can be initiated from the company side also. Now companies, in order to meet their work requirements, in order to meet their productivity requirements, in order to ensure that there is transparency, in order to ensure that monotony and boredom are avoided, in order to make sure that there is avoidance of frustration and nepotism in the organization, in order to make sure that there are healthy relationships which are maintained in the organizations. So for all these reasons, the companies can also initiate transfer of employees. Now, there are certain benefits associated with transfers. First is it helps in improving the motivation because boredom and monotony is eliminated. Some new element, some challenging role may be offered to the employee. It ensures future promotion. It helps in improving relationship between the manager and the employee and between the employee and another employee. It helps in improving the productivity, stabilization and provides job satisfaction to employees. These are some of the benefits associated with employee transfer. Now, when there are benefits, there are certain drawbacks also. The employee may feel inconvenient while moving on to a new location, while moving on to a new department on initial basis, but later on the employees may definitely adjust. It helps, it reduces, it may lead to adjustment problems. It reduces the control that may be existing between the maybe existing over the employees. It also leads to loss of time initially because when the employee is shifted to some new department or some new job role, the initial productivity may decline because the employee may have to learn some new things. So at that point of time, some loss of time may definitely happen. Now there are different types of transfers. Um, And on the basis of the purpose why transfer is done, these are the different types. First is production transfer. Production transfer is basically meant to meet productivity targets of the organization. So that is production transfer. Replacement transfer happens wherein maybe some employee in one department leaves and there is a vacancy. Maybe there is some few employees who are extra in some other department. So these employees can be exchanged, these can be replaced from the department where there is shortage, from the department where there is surplus to the department where there is shortage of employees. Then we have third category, that is versatility transfer. Now versatility transfer is basically happening because the purpose is to make the employees more versatile. The purpose is to give more exposure to the employees to different kinds of job roles in the organization so that the employee learns new knowledge, new skill and new attitudes. Then we have this shift transfer, when an employee working in the night shift is changed to morning shift and vice versa, that is shift transfer. And finally we have this remedial transfer. The purpose of remedial transfer is to make corrections in the previous decision which was taken at the time of, say suppose, placement of employees. Say if there is an employee who was wrongly placed on a job and as a result the productivity of the employee is declining, so maybe the suitable job was not allocated, so the employee may now be given some new job role and as a result that becomes remedial transfer. Now every organization has a transfer policy. It is basically a document which will consist of all the important information related to the job transfer of the employee. All the terms and conditions with respect to job transfers are mentioned in the transfer policy. And the reason why transfer policy is important, so that consistency can be maintained and to ensure that there is no biasness with respect to transfer decisions for employees. So a good transfer policy should follow these following rules: specify the type of transfers and the conditions under which it will be made, locate the authority in some officer who may intimate and implement transfers, indicate the basis for transfer, whether it is based on seniority or any other factor. Transfers should be in writing only and communicated to all the employees working in the organization, and transfer should not be made very frequently. These are the few guidelines that must be followed by every manager who is taking care of the transfers aspect in human resource management function. Then apart from transfer, another possibility of internal transfers is through promotion. In case of promotion, an employee is moved on to a new position with higher pay grades, better incentives, better job opportunities, more challenging roles, tasks and responsibilities, higher status and so on. So it is basically a vertical movement of an employee within the organization. And the purpose is to make employees more and more competitive, to make sure that the existing employees' skills and abilities are utilized to the full extent. It makes sure that outstanding employees, they get some kind of recognition. It helps in improving the motivation, morale and job satisfaction of employees, and it basically reduces discontent and unrest among employees, which may happen because of external recruitments. Now then again, promotions can be horizontal promotion, it can be vertical promotion, dry promotion and open or closed ended promotion. Now why is promotion important? It helps in improving the overall health in the organization. It maintains status quo, it maintains stability in the organization. The employee as well as the organization benefits from promotion. It helps in boosting the morale and motivation and job satisfaction of employees. It ensures that the existing employees are best utilized. It helps in forming future managers, giving more opportunities for training to the employees, and it encourages retention. So we can say that employee promotion plays a big role in employee satisfaction. It helps in employee engagement, boosts employee morale, reduces absenteeism, and ultimately contributes towards higher productivity. Then another not so sought after method of internal mobility is demotion. Rarely practiced, it is just the opposite of promotion, that is demotion we say. Over here the employee moves on to a lower rank, lower pay, lower status, usually involving lower level of difficulty and responsibility. Now, the various causes of demotion are incompetence on part of the employee, regular warnings if given to the employee, and still the employee is not able to increase the productivity, not able to improve the behavioral aspects, then demotion may occur. Some kind of organizational redesigning may also lead to demotion. Some kind of disciplinary action may also lead to demotion of an employee. And when the employees are not able to cope up with the changes, then they may get demoted. Now, demotion may again be voluntary demotion or non-voluntary demotion. Now, since demotion has some severe negative impacts on the employees, therefore it is rarely practiced in the organizations. So it may have serious impact on the social well-being, on the psychological well-being of the employee. It hurts the self-esteem and self-respect of an employee. So it may cause emotional turmoil. Therefore it should be avoided as far as possible. Then coming over to the next important aspect, that is external mobility, also called as separation, which means that the employee is no longer a part of the organization and is now moving out of the organization, maybe because of resignation, retirement, removal, death, incapacitation, some kind of accident, injury, layoff, retrenchment, dismissal, discharge. So all these could be the possible reasons because of which separations may occur. Coming over to first thing, layoff. Layoff is basically temporary removal of an employee, temporary suspension of an employee for various reasons. Maybe the organization does not have sufficient work to be allocated to the employees, maybe because of shortage of some kind of raw material, maybe because of machine breakdowns and so on. When the organization at present does not need the services of an employee, few employees can be laid off, and the laid off employees are given some kind of compensation and they are offered some kind of alternative employment by the employer. So, and these employees are laid off with this, and they are given some kind of assurance that whenever the organization has some kind of work to be offered to these employees will definitely be called back. So some of the causes are listed in front of you. So some of the reasons because of which an employee layoff may occur: because of cost reduction, staff reduction, relocation of the plant, merger, buyout, organizational changes, outsourcing, plant or branch closing, automation, etc. So all these reasons contribute towards lesser requirement of manpower, and as a result few employees are eliminated from the organization on a temporary basis. So that is layoff. Now the layoffs, again, they have their advantages and disadvantages. It ensures that only the best people are there in the team. It is good on part of the organization and it helps in saving the unnecessary costs. So it is very cost effective, but it has definitely associated with lot of disadvantages. It involves lot of legal problems. It basically causes burden on the existing employees who have been retained. Employees morale, it goes down. Employees may start, even the employees who have been retained, even they may start looking out for jobs somewhere else. Then another thing with respect to separations is retrenchment. Retrenchment is basically an involuntary separation on permanent basis to reduce corporate expenses. It basically means termination of employee services because of replacement of the worker by machines or closure of the unit due to lack of products demand produced by the unit. Employees are not taken back here because it is permanent in nature. Employees are permanently terminated, and it is basically a strategy which is used by the organization to cut down the cost and to cut down the size of the organization. It can again have serious impacts. It impacts the work experience of employees. It leads to rise in entrepreneurship, prospect for career correction. So employees can look in for these aspects when they have been retrenched. They may look out for better career opportunities somewhere else. They may think of entrepreneurial ventures. They may think about what kind of work expectations they had and whether they were able to meet up those expectations or not. Coming over to advantages and disadvantages of retrenchment, it is cost effective strategy, improves performance, loss of good employees, and critical response to the various factors as I've discussed earlier. Then the next separation technique is suspension. It is a practice in which an employee is not allowed to attend official work and will not be receiving compensation, but not always. So suspension is also temporary. So it is a part of an organizational disciplinary procedure. It generally happens when some kind of disciplinary action is pending against an employee. An employee may be asked to remain at home for some days, and employee can be suspended for medical and health reasons also. So wherein this, as a result, the employee may have to remain at home for a few days, and later on the employee may join. So the suspension basically involves giving a written notice to the employee, and the date from which suspension starts is 5 days following the notification. Then the next thing is retirement. Retirement is when a person stops or retires working after the service of a certain period of time. It could be because of the age set by the government or companies, the voluntary retirement due to some health issues, work conditions, or some other issues, or the benefits which a person can avail later. So retirement can also be voluntary or involuntary. Involuntary retirement is when the person attains a certain age and he or she has to retire because that age is set by the government acts, and at times because of maybe some health conditions or maybe because of some personal reasons, the employees may take retirement before attaining that particular age. That is called as voluntary retirement. So various benefits which employees get after retirement: pension, gratuity, provident fund, medical benefits, old age benefits, and so on. Then another way of dismissal of employees is separation of employees is dismissal. It is the act of removing or terminating the job of employee. People are employed with the company and have to abide by the company policies, responsibilities, and work culture. If employees tend to ignore them, if employees do something which is not acceptable by the organization, an organization can remove them or dismiss them. Some of the basic reasons because of which an employee may be dismissed could be poor conduct, poor behavior, regular late coming to the organization, lacking the capability or the qualifications for the job, redundancy, restrictions, and so on. So dismissal could be for fair reasons as well as for unfair reasons. For fair reasons, it could be neglecting the duties, indulging into some kind of fraud, theft, bribery, wrong behavior with fellow members or superiors or subordinates. Whereas if an employee is dismissed on the basis of age, gender, nationality, religion, or color, that is quite unfair. Then another thing is discharge. The employee discharge is permanent separation of an employee from the payroll for violation of company rules or for inadequate performance. It is basically when an employee is fired from the job. The basic reasons could be completely physical disability, and when the employee will no longer be able to work for the organization, violent behavior, aggressive behavior, indulgence in alcoholism, violation of company discipline, rules and regulations, indulging in some kind of major theft, fraud, forgery, dishonesty, inefficiency. So because on account of all these reasons, an employee may be discharged from the organization. Now there are some minute differences between dismissal and discharge. Now in case of discharge, it is the termination of contract by notice or payment of wages in lieu of notice. So when an employee is being discharged, some kind of notice is served to the employee and some kind of compensation or 1 month salary has to be given to the employee. Whereas when an employee is dismissed, it implies not merely termination without notice or payment, but essentially it indicates a measure of punishment. It is more punishing, dismissal is more punishing in nature as compared to discharge. In case of discharge, the employer has to immediately settle all the dues with respect to pension, gratuity and so on. Whereas in case of dismissal, the employer can hold the dues of an employee with respect to the amount for which the organization may have suffered loss because of the incompetency of the employee. Before discharging, employer may or may not go in for disciplinary action. But before dismissal, disciplinary proceedings have to hold. So all these are, I'm repeating once again, dismissal, discharge, layoff, retrenchment, retirement, etc. All these are the various ways of employee separation, also called as external mobility. And when we talked about internal mobility, it comprised of transfer, promotion and demotion. So with this, we are coming to the end of unit number 3. Thank you so much.